Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to show you another variation of how to repurpose and reuse a decorative box. So as mentioned in our previous video, oftentimes people have these boxes laying around their home or they have purchased a box and they want to figure out a creative and unique way to present a gift to someone. So we're working with this specific box, and for the purposes of this arrangement, which we have coined as surprise rose box, you're going to need a box with a lid. So we're going to begin preparing the box as usual with two layered pieces of 30 micro cellophane. We're going to put this into the bottom of the box, and this will ensure that we have created a protective barrier between the floral sponge and the box. This will, of course, help us contain the water, contain the flowers, and avoid any messes during transportation and gifting. For this specific box and its dimensions, we're going to need about 1.5 pieces of standard size floral sponge. Ensure that when you are placing the sponge into the box that you are gently pushing aside the cellophane so that the cellophane doesn't curve under, leaving an exposed gap. So do be careful, do be mindful, and ensure that it is firmly secured into the box. Once you have completed this step, you can go ahead, take a pair of scissors, and cut around the edges of the cellophane. As mentioned in our previous video, you want to ensure that the cellophane is reaching the top of the edge and not beneath it, because when it is slightly beneath the edge, there is the possibility that the recipient of the flowers, when they are filling the box with some water, they can pour a little bit of water past the gaps, and that will cause the box to soak through, and it will create a mess for the recipient and the surface that it's placed on, as well as deteriorate the box. So do be mindful that when you're cutting around, you are leaving that additional cellophane. Once you have completed this step, you can move on to arranging the flowers. So today we are working with red roses. Of course, if there is a different type of rose, a different color of rose that you're wishing to incorporate, feel free to do so. The amount of roses that you're working with is going to vary depending on the dimensions of the box that you are using. So before inserting the rose into the box, do measure it up against the box to ensure that the stem is touching the bottom of the sponge or reaching the sponge deep enough so that it has access to water. Then gently cover the lid to ensure that the lid is, number one, covering the rose, but also at the same time not pushing or creating pressure on the rose, so that there's just a little bit of space for it to be transported easily and not physically damaged. Once you have done this, go ahead and start inserting the roses. We do want to have them tightly collected together. This, of course, is to accommodate the lid that you're going to be putting over it, but also ensuring that they're all nestled tightly, that they're all secured, and that it looks like a gift box full of roses. So the amount of roses that you will need for this is, as mentioned, going to vary depending on the size of the box that you are working with. So in a bunch of roses, usually there's various sizes of heads of the roses, especially if they are fresh. They are going to open up a little bit later on. But when you are working with them and gifting them, you do want to ensure that you're placing them in a bit of a scattered pattern so it's not blatantly obvious that the sizes of the roses vary. So for example, here we have some gaps that we're filling. So do fill the gaps with appropriately sized roses in this circumstance. So go ahead and fill in the spaces between the roses and the box. So for this specific box, it looks like we are using about 6 roses per row, and it's going to total about 3 rows in this instance. And that's about 18 roses that we're going to be working with. Once again, as mentioned, you are going to have different amounts of roses for different dimensions of boxes. So it's very easy to create this arrangement. It's incredibly easy to put it together, but it's quite a lovely surprise for the recipient. So go ahead and fill the remaining spaces with the roses that you have. You can, of course, use different colors if you like for various occasions. Be mindful, of course, when you are putting in the roses into the box to grip the head of the rose and gently push it in. Do not force it in. If there is resistance and it's pushing up against a stem that's already in the flower sponge, it could create a situation where the head of the rose snaps, and you don't want to waste a rose or damage a rose unnecessarily. So when you are putting these roses in, do be gentle. Do not force it in. If it's feeling that there's quite a bit of resistance, do remove the rose and try again. So do take your time, don't force it, and that will prevent any unwanted breakage or damage to the rose. So as you see here, we did use about 18 roses in total, created about 3 rows, and once this step has been completed, you can move on to putting in a bit of filler. For the filler, you are, of course, welcome to use whatever filler that you have at your disposal. We're going to be using some limonium for the purposes of this arrangement. You could use baby's breath, you can use decorative berries, you can also add your own decorations, however you feel is necessary to decorate this specific arrangement. So do not feel confined to anything that we're showing here. Go ahead and take pieces of your filler and place them in between the roses to create a little bit more of texture, a little bit more dimension, and to make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm just making these little bunches of limonium and I am inserting them in between the roses. Of course, you can also use baby's breath. So we're just showing you a different variation on this arrangement. So once you have completed it, lightly mist it with some water. Wipe away any of the excess water with a cloth. You can also add a tiny bit of water before transporting it, but don't add too much because the water can move around, it can splash around, it can start leaking. You can just simply remind your recipient to add a little bit of water once they have received it. So as you see here, this is the finished product. And the next step is just going to be packaging this and creating a bit of a gift box. So we're going to gently close the lid over the flowers, and because we were mindful of this in the beginning stages, the flowers aren't being pushed down. There's still enough room for it to resist any pressure or physical damage to the flowers. So we're just going to gently close it. And we're going to seal it with some ribbon. I'm using this satin ribbon in this case, and I've matched it to the box. And of course, depending on the color, depending on the dimensions, and depending on the ribbon that you have at your disposal, this is entirely customizable. So gently take the box and wrap some ribbon around it, the way you would seal a gift. We're going to bring it to the center of the top of the box. And we're going to create a beautiful ribbon to go on top of the box. So as you see here, I'm just tying this on the top, and I'm going to be putting together a ribbon for the top of this box. And we do have videos on our channel where we kind of explain our technique as to how to create this ribbon. And that video goes into a little bit more detail as to what we are doing here. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to swiftly put this together and place it on the top of the box. You're going to cut a bit of a streamer here, and you're going to tie it to the top of the box. Make sure you're pinching all of the loops together so they don't come undone. And don't worry if you struggle with this a little bit. It does take a bit of practice, a little bit of patience, but eventually it will become second nature. So here it is. Here's the finished product. As you see, it looks like a very cute gift that you can give to your recipient. It's very easy to put together. It takes nothing at all. It lets you reuse a box that you likely have lying around your house, and it's quite a lovely gift to receive. Thank you so much for watching. Leave questions and comments down below, and we hope to see you very soon.